The number 8 Miami Hurricanes lose 95-73 at number 12 Kentucky in a game where Miami kept it close in the first half. For most of the half, they actually held a 29-23 lead after Norchad Omier gets a dunk to cap a 13-0 run, where Miami did what they do best, which is get out in transition and knock down three-pointers during that time, during that run. They had 3 threes in a 90-second span. Christian Watson, Norchad, and then Matthew Cleveland hit threes. And you had to have felt good if you're Miami in that moment, because they're doing what they did best. They get out and run, knock down threes, and they actually kind of turn the momentum. They're down 21-11 early on and kind of reverse it with one of these kill shots. And if you've paid attention to the website, I've referenced this quite a bit with Evan Mia's website as he comes up with this thing called a kill shot, which is a 10-0 run in a game. And Miami has done well at that this season. Comes into the game 11th in the country in averaging about 1.5 a game. And Kentucky had not allowed a 10-0 run against them this season. So during that moment, it felt good for Miami. They get in the game, Norchad battling foul trouble, but he goes back in there, which Jim Larinaga doesn't always play guys with 2 fouls. So Omier gets in there, hits a 3, gets a dunk, making an impact. However, it wasn't sustainable, that lead, and they certainly couldn't build on that lead because I think there were a few things coming into play. And I will get into this game defensively of some breakdowns that I saw and kind of what this means moving forward. But offensively, there were just a lot of things. And simply put, Jim said after the game, they just were out of character. The 8 assists weren't good enough. I didn't think they did a good enough job getting good enough shots, creating for others, or off the dribble, getting good shots on their own. You saw Wooga Poplar come up with some big buckets in the first half, pulling up on his own. But there were some tough shots that he had to hit, and he did. He's a good player. I think you're seeing now why a lot of people thought he would have the breakout season. You saw what I said. I said he was going to be the top breakout player in the ACC, and you're seeing why. For him to be able to do that against this opponent, he was my player to watch in this game because I thought he needed to play well. It just didn't happen enough for the other guys. And the 2 guys who I thought really struggled in this game, you don't have to look very far other than looking at the box score. Matthew Cleveland comes into the game averaging nearly 17 points a game. He finishes with 5 points, 2 of 3 shooting, just not an impact player. And I thought he was not very good defensively either, but offensively, he's got to be more active. He's got to be able to put the ball in the basket, take shots. That was a matchup where it wasn't as overwhelming as the other matchups when you're looking at size and athleticism at the 4 other spots. Whereas with Matthew going up against Fierro, I thought Matthew could have won that matchup, and certainly Miami needed him to play well and be productive and really rise to the occasion. Matt's not played in high-level games like this with high stakes as a ranked team. Florida State, where he was before, was not, competing for high-level stuff, even though they're in the ACC and playing some big-time opponents. This was a high-level game where I thought Matthew really needed to rise to the occasion, and he just didn't. And so he'll need to, kind of bounce back off of this, really learn from it. He had shown some positive signs, certainly in the first 5 games, but tonight just wasn't a good performance from him. And then Nigel Pack, 2 points, 1 of 6 shooting. Kentucky really made it difficult on Nigel. Could not get his shot off very well. Not very many clean looks from threes. Certainly, they're doing everything they can to chase Miami off the three-point line. John Calipari said that after the game, that they wanted to make the three-point shooting difficult. And I thought Nigel coming into this game, it was going to be a tough game for him on both ends of the floor because of the mismatches. I thought Kentucky had the advantage on certain size. I thought they could defend him well enough because they'd like to switch on the perimeter, or they could put size on him. And then conversely, Nigel was going to have to guard a much bigger guard with what Kentucky was putting out there. And I just thought overall it was going to be a tough game, and certainly proved to be that. So Nigel's got to find ways to be more effective. Especially, it was certainly surprising in the sense that he was coming off a game where he scored 28 points against Kansas State. But in this one, he just couldn't get a shot off and couldn't get much going. I think they've got to really play off each other a lot more. Like I said, they've got to be able to either dribble and then kick out, or they've got to be able to set screens. They've got to have more movement away from the ball. They've got to just play quicker on offense. And they've been a good offensive team leading up to this game. But I just thought in this one, when you play good teams, you've got to really be on point with certain things. And I think this is where you're starting to see a little bit of differences between this year's team and last year's team, because just offensively, there's some things that they're just limited to. And I do think that some of these things that we saw tonight against Kentucky are not just a one-off thing. I think it's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with moving forward. So O'Meara was limited due to foul trouble, and so was Bensley Joseph, who just was not able to get into this game effectively on both ends. You really needed Bensley's defense, and I think he's had lapses this year. I understand some of the praise he gets for being a good defensive player. However, I still see defensive lapses, either guarding the ball, struggling there at times, or just being in the right position. But I just thought because he got in foul trouble, comes out, he just got out of the rhythm and just wasn't able to provide much offensively or even defensively, which is exactly what Miami needed from him tonight. And I think that's just what happened with this team. It just, with foul trouble, they just got out of sorts, just couldn't get into a good rhythm as a team overall. And I don't think that's going to continue in every game. I think Kentucky, with what they have with their roster, not very many teams in this country, not very many teams in the ACC are going to look like Kentucky looks or play in that style. So college basketball, you're not going to win every game. You're going to have games like this where you don't look great, and Miami did not look good. You know, they had a tough matchup on the road, and they didn't play well enough to win by any means. Even though they had a lead at one point, it just didn't feel like this was a game Miami was going to win, like they were in real control of this because of the areas that they're weak in, and they just weren't able to hide those well enough, in addition to playing to their strengths in terms of making shots at a high percentage from three. I think they've really got to make a lot of 3-pointers as well as high percentage twos, and then get out and run, and then do some things defensively. There were quite a few discouraging things that I saw defensively from Miami tonight, as they give up 48 points in the paint, allow Kentucky to shoot 60% from the field, 42 from three, and Miami only created 8 turnovers. And Kentucky had not been turning the ball over this season, as they scored 95 points. They go over 50 points in the second half and just really take control of the game, get out in transition. The transition points were high for Kentucky as well. Looking at it right now, 23 points on fast break points. And that's what Kentucky wants to do. And I just didn't think Miami did enough to really disrupt or really make Kentucky uncomfortable in any way. And the 48 points in the paint, and I think everybody knows, look, Miami has an undersized team. Even some of the bigs they bring off the bench, they're just not going to match up, from a height standpoint, particularly in the front court. However, Kentucky was not, pounding Miami with a low block presence tonight. And I think that's what was discouraging, because you're going to see teams in the ACC that will do that. When they face Duke and North Carolina, both those teams have high-level premier bigs that can do that. And tonight, it was more about the penetration. I thought Miami really struggled to stop the ball in the half court, and I know the transition stuff is always tough to defend, but I just thought even in the half court sense, they weren't keeping their guy out of the paint nearly enough, either for drives for buckets to put up shots or for kick out opportunities for their teammates. I just didn't think Miami applied enough good ball pressure in this game. And I think that's why Kentucky was able to just stay in a rhythm offensively. And because Miami's undersized, I think they've got to do different things defensively. I thought we'd see a little bit more of their scramble defense. I thought they would try to trap a little bit more, maybe try to create some different things. But I understand why they didn't at certain times, because Kentucky can certainly just throw over the top and pass it around. But I just didn't think Miami did enough defensively to disrupt things, create more turnovers. Look, if you're going to get pounded, inside because you're undersized, you've got to do different things. And I just didn't. I think those are areas Miami can and needs to improve on, with that ball pressure, defending, the penetration, not letting guys get into the paint area for either shots or just paint touches in general, because that can really shift things. And what I saw with the first half, I was concerned about it in the second half, because if Miami really wanted to clog the paint, they certainly could do that, either bring in a help side defender, but that allows yourself to be more vulnerable from three because you're not on your man nearly enough. And that's what we saw a little bit as Kentucky got it going from three, in addition to still being able to drive inside the lane. So Miami's going to play their first ACC game against Notre Dame. I'll have my thoughts on Notre Dame as I watch them and kind of break them down. But they're off to a slow start. They're 3-3, so certainly Miami's going to be favored to win at home, expected to win. I expect them to win as well. But you want to see some encouraging signs moving forward. And Miami will use the month of December to really get back on track. They have a real tough game against Colorado, I've also been impressed with, as I was with Kentucky, a different team than Kentucky, as I get more into that. But Miami has a way to get themselves back on track before ACC play really begins and gets going in January. And if you followed this team just in recent years, and this happens all the time in college basketball where teams drop ones, but last year Miami lose by 18 points to Maryland. They didn't look good in that one. 2 years ago they lost by 32 to Alabama, and both those teams had deep tournament runs. And so it can look bad in moments, and certainly this was a bad one the way it looked for Miami as they got rolled in this one. But the way things have gone in the past, Miami and the coaching staff have done a good job of really learning from their mistakes and moving forward. So I expect that to happen. This team does have its weaknesses and shortcomings, but it's still a team with a lot of strengths. And I think that they'll continue to play to its strengths, have a good, positive outlook moving forward. And I think they're still a good offensive team, and they're going to look to outscore teams, and that will be the key as they continue to try to be better defensively. So we'll see how everything goes moving forward. But drop in the comments below what I missed, what I get right, what concerns you the most, or maybe not. Maybe was it just a one-off game there, and you're still really excited about this team, as you should be, because this team is still a good team, and there's still a lot to play for, obviously. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you have a good rest of the night, and take care.